Today, we're bringing 5G. 5G, 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 5G is the 5G.
5G, 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 5G,
5G, 5G.
5G.
Welcome, everybody, to the Think Different podcast. That's right. It is episode 68, and we are a threesome today because not only do we have Mr. Keto Frank Funk here, that's right, I'm the reason why he's lost 50 pounds, but we also have Kelly Potlucky right below me here on the screen if you're watching us on YouTube. She is here today, a former Apple employee for, about 5 years in total of time you were there, and now you are hosting your own podcast, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But first, Kelly, why don't you quickly just give us a quick introduction of who you are? Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Well, all right.
Because we already know Frank.
Well, my name is Kelly Podlucky, as you said. I am 31, living in Florida. Worked at Apple at Freehold Retail for about 4 years, and then I was working at Apple Care at home for about a year. And there was a bunch of stuff in between. In between that time, I got married, have 2 dogs, bought a house, living the dream.
Likewise, yeah. It's amazing how when we all start. I mean, Frank was still the same. Nothing's changed with Frank. He's been 68 since he started working for Apple. But me and you have grown because think about it, we went from being single, living with our parents, probably going up to adulthood now. So it's been
I started
crazy.
out that same way.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, Frank. Frank, listen, we are way past the 50s here, Frank. We okay. But I can appreciate it, Frank, because, we were born, me and Kelly were probably born right around the time when technology was changing from the old style to the new style.
Oh, you
so
mean
we had that
getting away from
appreciation.
pen and pencil to electronic?
Yeah, I mean, we had a cassette player, dude. Like, that's terrible.
Wow. Do you guys even know what an 8-track is?
Of course I know what an 8-track is.
Oh, there you go.
I've never seen one, but I'm sure it's great.
I have one right down here somewhere.
Well, you go play with that later, okay? So let's talk a little bit about Kelly for a little bit for the next hour, because that's what this whole episode is all about, her.
Oh, gosh.
So let's talk about why you actually went to work for Apple. You started back in 2008, I believe, right?
Yeah, right. I started April 2008. I was still in high school. I was a senior, working part-time, and I was working previously at Hollister. And it was a great first job, but I wanted more. And at that point, I was so unsure about going to college and what the F am I going to do with my life? And I had a good connection at the Apple store at Freehold. And I was like, all right, I'll just apply for it. And that's when they had the concierge position. And I wound up getting the position, and it was amazing. It changed my life.
And do you remember who interviewed you?
Dan Zadak.
There you go.
We'll get to that in a
Dan
second.
Z.
We'll get to that in a second. But let's talk, so a lot of people don't realize that concierge was a role in the store. We actually use it now today. If the word concierge, if you hear it around your Apple retail store, that is an application which, was also a role. And the application is basically how we organize everyone that comes into that store and know where they are, especially at the Genius Bar, which was one of the biggest things, but also personal shopping was a big thing.
Yeah.
I remember that. So discuss a little bit about the concierge role, what you recall from it, because you were in that role from the time it started to the time it ended, which is 8 months? No, I'm joking. It was,
Yeah, it was.
it went quick.
It did. It was honestly one of my favorite positions I've ever held to date was concierge. So it was just essentially being the forefront of the storefront. So people walk in, you greet them, you say, welcome to the Apple store. What are you doing here? You buying? Are you going to the Genius Bar for support? What's going on? And then at that point, you pretty much are just directing them to wherever they need to go, whether it's a specialist that was open and ready for sale, or if it was a Genius Bar appointment, or creating an appointment for them. Eventually, towards the end of it, we started doing really kind of basic troubleshooting, restarting iPads, iPhones, doing as much as we could to avoid impact at the Genius Bar.
Yeah, a couple things about the role. Number one, there used to be a Mac on the front, which concierge used to be front-facing, which was a little weird for Apple to showcase a front-facing app like that. But also, I don't know if you know, but the on-point position is what it's called now. Really, it's kind of concierge where either a genius or an FRS at the time, now it's called service specialist, actually does exactly that. And pretty much the same idea. So they just kind of, but that role wasn't there very long. But you did move into another role, which mean you got to share together, which was the FRS role. Frank, you remember the
Yes.
FRS role? Do you remember a little bit about that?
I do not. No.
Okay, good. Kelly, do you remember what that was about?
No, I don't.
Me?
Well, yeah, you know what it was about. There were
Oh.
three things that we did as an
Okay.
FRS.
So it was training.
Hmm.
So it was one-on-ones. I think it was like Get Ready Mac or something like
Very
that.
basics. Yeah, very, very basic.
Yeah. It was minor troubleshooting of small mobile devices.
And that included at the time we actually did start screen repairs when the iPhone
Yeah.
3G and the iPhone 3GS, we were able to repair those.
Yep. And then it was data transfers.
Oh yeah, so let's
Oh,
talk a little
that,
bit about that.
I do remember the role. I just don't remember the acronyms.
So me and Kelly had the same role at the same time. There was one guy that was the FRS. They were kind of like a trial, and then we moved up with like 4 people at the same time.
Yeah.
All moved up to one role, and we had
Oh, God.
the whole corner of the back room was just data transfer because there were so many that came in.
Yes.
Because
I remember Amit being like a
he was
wizard
the first.
at it.
Yeah, he was the first one. That's why
Yeah.
he was the best, and then he transferred all the knowledge to us. And then the controversy began because data transfers were very interesting. We used to do Ethernet to Ethernet transfer, but sometimes we would see some things that we are not supposed to see. So Kelly, you have to have something from that role that you saw that was like crazy. Frank, 10 ticker pills.
Oh, that's my grandson's.
Sweet man.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so how vulgar am I allowed to get? Because
It doesn't matter.
there were some really intense things that we saw. There was
Some pretty hard drugs. There was a lot of drug paraphernalia, like not just like weed, but like needles and like crazy stuff like that. And then like, okay, so you're doing this data transfer and you have to like verify everything's transferring. So like you have to open
Count it. You have to count it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then you have to look these people in the eye the next day and be like, everything transferred successfully.
Yeah.
And then you
Mm-hmm.
but there was like really nice pictures too, you know.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, family.
No one cares about the birds and the babies.
But there was, oh my gosh, there was so much porn.
Yeah, there's a lot of porn.
Every computer was porned.
A lot of parents not very happy because a lot of them would pick it up. They would verify things and they would see that in their daughters or sons or anything, mostly their daughters. And then
Yes.
it's amazing. Yes, she knows because there was a lot of it. There was a lot of it, but it was actually one of the funnest roles. I remember we used to spend like 2-3 hours on data transfer, which was actually kind of fun because there was
It
only
was.
3 or 4 to do, and there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of pressure because it was a 24 to 48 hour turnaround time.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Right.
So we'll kind of lean off of that a little bit, but you get the idea. Being in that role was fun at the time. They don't do that anymore though.
Oh, it was fun.
Oh, well, they do still do data transfer.
They do. The good thing is they came out with an app that does it now with the migration assistant, and it does it all for them. It puts everything in the right spots. You don't have to check
Amen.
anything. In fact, Apple doesn't allow us to check anything at the time when I
Yeah.
left. But let's talk about moving to different roles because you weren't just an FRS. You moved up to, and now I was out of the store. I think, Frank, you were still there,
Yeah.
but I left the store to go to Cherry Hill, but you ended up becoming a genius.
I did, yeah. That was crazy. So it was FRS, and then I felt like I was kind of pressured to go like creative land, and you guys were all amazing wizards, and I was so intimidated by that team. We're genius, and also there was like no ladies on that team, so that was a really big challenge. But I remember Chris called me in, Chris Miller, and he was like, "You got it." And I just remember crying. I was so stoked.
Yeah, why did you go genius? Why did you go genius over creative?
I remember falling in love with like the screen repairs and just getting like my hands dirty. you know, just physically doing the repairs and making sure like it was working and making the people so happy. When you said like you fixed it, I don't know. I just loved it.
And regarding you know Genius World, now I remember a famous interaction you had because there were some celebrities you did troubleshoot. I remember one in particular. If you
Which
remember
one?
The Situation. I remember
Yeah.
you actually. Yes. Yeah, you got. I saw that because he was in the. I remember because I came back to the store as a creative, and he was like in
Yeah.
a hooded shirt. He was trying to protect himself, making sure no one knew what was going on. But I remember watching him because I went to the bar for something, and you were troubleshooting it. The
Mhm.
stuff.
I
Was there
still
any-
remember that appointment. So he came back multiple times. There was he was firmware locked
right.
on his computer, and I couldn't fix it. We had to contact AppleCare at that point to get the firmware password to unlock it, but that's like 48 hours. You had to verify his account. You had to verify his Apple ID. You had to verify he was he. It was a process, and then
It's
he
in-
was also very difficult to get in touch with at that time.
Yeah. Is there any other celebrities that you remember helping troubleshoot?
I didn't troubleshoot with him, but I remember LL Cool J being like a hotspot coming in all the time.
Oh, do you remember his stalker was in?
I
all these-
do remember his stalker.
Oh, I don't know about this.
Oh my God!
Oh,
He had this woman was in every day. Now I worked nights. Okay.
Okay.
At that time. She was in every night. She would go on a computer and she would write these long letters and whatever and send them all out to him. And anybody that would talk to her, she would tell you how great this guy was. And I was like,
Oh my God. I totally remember this girl. She was dressed up in the weirdest stuff too. I remember
Yes.
now. Wow. Yes, I do remember her. Wow. that
Every
takes me
night
back.
she'd come in. Every night.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That is. Thank you for jogging that memory because I had not. That is so funny.
You know, it's funny. I think of that every time I see him on the commercial for when NCIS, when he's on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every
Los
time I
Angeles,
see
yeah.
that, I think of her. Believe it or
Oh
not,
my
it's kind of
God.
weird.
sorry.
I said, I wonder if she ever caught up with him.
Oh,
I hope they interacted once in their lifetime. I hope so. Just you know,
good
complete the
vibes.
circle.
Well, let's talk about some of the negatives though, because there were some things, Kelly, that I'm sure in Apple retail you didn't like about it. Obviously, you're not there anymore. No, none of us are. So there had to be something negative that really you just didn't like about it, or anything you could think of that was hard.
I mean,
Like,
I was grateful that we didn't really have like sales quotas
right.
at that time. I didn't have to sell AppleCare during the appointments. I know that was like kind of like a requirement towards my end.
Yeah, well, they had. Did you have to sell the what did they call it before?
Joint
It was
venture?
Apple- No, well, joint venture. But when you had to sell all three.
Dot Mac Pro.
Dot Mac,
Dot Mac.
yeah.
Dot Mac. iCloud, ProCare,
Yeah.
AppleCare 1-to-1. And you sold all four, you would get a gold star.
Yeah.
I don't know what that meant, but I always wanted one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never did that. I was not.
No one could. I mean, and a business introduction was another big thing that they really
Yes.
wanted you to get.
Yeah.
But
Go for Steve. He was a good guy.
yeah,
Who?
He did
Who
good.
did you say, Kelly?
Steven? Right? On the business.
Yes.
He was
All
awesome.
right. So that leads me into a question I have for you.
Oh my.
Who was your favorite manager and your least favorite manager?
Am I allowed to say this?
okay. So
Sure.
go first name. Don't put the last name with maybe just like Dan Z as an example. Just point that out.
All right. So, favorite manager. Oh my gosh. It was a Dan.
Okay.
Am I allowed to say that?
Paul Dan?
There's three Dans. There were three Dans at
The
Freehold.
Dan?
Was it? It was.
Well, it's a tie. It was a between that Dan and Chris Miller.
Okay.
Okay.
Miller was just phenomenal. He handled customer interactions very, very well. He communicated very well. He had great empathy. Just all around stellar guy. Same thing with Dan. He was really great at like the hard conversations, even though they made him uncomfortable.
And then the worst. You don't have to say the name, but I think
Oh.
we'll get the idea who it is based on.
It was one of your questions. It was one of my leads that I thought had my back during hard times, and he did not.
Mm.
The genius lead?
Hmm.
Okay, I already know what that is.
Oh.
I can just tell by the person on the personality. So
Tall
yeah.
guy, right? Tall
Oh, yeah.
guy.
Very.
He's
Yeah.
still the
Still
lead
kicking
genius
there.
in Freehold, right?
Let's just say that, very dedicated to his job. But, again, it's almost like you get to the point where you're there for so long, you almost feel like you're untouchable in a way. I think that happens with Apple Retail is when you're there for that long, it's really hard to get rid of you because you've been so
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
Apple is, but I think it could be a good thing, like in my case being there or Frank's case being as long as we were there.
Yeah.
But it could be detriment to someone who still is there. So
I just hope that it was challenging. Like, as long as it was continuing to be challenging,
Mhm.
I guess it's worth staying.
do you have
Yeah.
any stories from any customer interactions, whether they're good or bad, that you remember to this day? Like especially if you went on an interview, and a lot of times I always share like one or two stories I remember from Apple Retail that were either difficult or memorable. You must have one of those.
Memorable was like a really sweet interaction. It was a gentleman who brought in his dad's MacBook, the white MacBook, and the top case was all broken and everything like that. And the computer just wouldn't turn on. And at that point, with that operating system, as soon as, it got enough juice and it turned on, it kind of like woke back up to exactly where it was. And there was just so much porn. And the look on this guy's face when he saw what his dad was doing, or maybe it was him, I don't know. In my mind, it was still his dad.
You shared that story because now that's recalling my time. But
Oh my, yeah. And then like a couple of days later, he sent flowers to the store and he was like, LOL, sorry for my dad's porn.
that's awesome.
That was awesome.
I bet you
And then
every Apple employee has got a porn story somewhere. At least a genius does.
I'd be surprised if they don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And if they don't, they're lying.
Frank, as a trainer, did you get any?
Well,
Yeah.
I
I'm
don't.
sure
I
you
won't
did.
say it was porn, but do you remember? I'm trying to think of his name. He was he played the guitar, tall, skinny kid from Kansas City. What was his name?
Dan?
Dave. Dan?
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 Dave. Yeah, it was Dave. And he had a friend that was from
Dan and
Kansas
Casey?
City. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that.
Dan and Casey.
Yes.
Right? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one time, this girl came in, and she asked for him, and I said, "Well, he's not here." I said, "Well, do you want me to let him know you're here?" And she gave me her email, and I didn't pay any attention to it. And I looked at it after she left, and I went, "No, that can't be a real email." So when he came in, I said, "Do you know the girl that has this email?" And he looked at it. He goes, "Oh yeah, I know her." And I was like, I said, "Oh my God!" And it was something like up my ass at something or other. And I'm like,
nice.
"Oh man!" And I'm like, I said, "Man, you lead the life, dude."
Yeah, those two, especially those two.
Oh,
Definitely
God.
did.
He could play too.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
He could play the guitar.
Yeah, he was definitely
Yeah.
skilled. Yeah, he was definitely skilled at. It's just too bad that he was a little, I would say, lazy, regarding, especially when he was not in the store a lot. That was probably a big thing for me. But but as far as like teaching us, like as far as educating us, he was really good at that.
Yeah.
But every memorable moment comes to an end because at some point, Kelly, you decided to say, "Screw this! I'm not staying at Apple." So
No.
you gotta talk about why or what decision led you to leaving, and what year was that?
So this was 2012, I want to say. Maybe 2000. No, it was 2012. It was like January 2012. I was a genius for maybe a year and a half, 2 years at this point. And I was the only lady on the team of like 30 guys. And that was like, I didn't realize how tough it would be at the time, but that was freaking hard, like looking back at it. There was a
There was
lot of
small
like
room back there too.
small room, very smelly.
Very small.
It
a lot
was
of guys.
A lot of guys, a lot of feet, a lot of farts, a lot of like competitions.
That's
of
what guys
farts.
do.
You know, just letting them rip. They were all buddies. But it came to a point where like I wasn't like supported as a fellow genius. And like there was a little bit of like hostility and like they made it very, very difficult. And like there was shit talking behind my back, and then I'm sure I was shit talking behind their backs too, because I was just so angry. And yeah, so
Well, but do you think that's indicative of Apple retail or just any retail outlet?
I think there's different levels of respect depending on position.
Do you feel like if you went to a different store, it would have been a different story?
No, yes, because I
Okay.
did. I went to the Sagemore store, I went to the Atlantic City store, and those guys were like welcoming with open arms. Now, I don't know if I like continued to stay if I went back. And I'm sure like maybe my troubleshooting skills weren't up to par, like what they expected, but I still passed the same test that they did. I still went through the same trainings that they did. I was getting like great customer service surveys, like, you know, like at that point, like I was getting good interactions.
Yeah, well, so the pieces that you say you feel were lacking, they certainly could have been honed and gotten better over time.
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody's perfect.
No, and I think definitely at that point towards the later end, I did hone up my skills. I remember like Rob Kay saying of like back at house, like I did a very good triaging and like I caught something that somebody else wouldn't. Like there was good, I was doing my job well, I thought, as best as I could. There was just still a lot of hostility. And I did bring it up to management. At first I brought it up to my lead. And at that point, I don't know if lead and my dad were buddies, but like that also was like a challenge because it's like, Dad, what the frick do I do? And he's like, you know, you have to like just be one of the guys, you know, it's fine, just roll with it, just keep doing it. And like I got to a certain point where I was like, frick that, I'm so done with this. So I brought it up to, you know, lead, and it was like freaking brushed under the rug. And then that's like when I was like, I have to like do this myself type of thing. And that kind of like fell in my career since like I've been in like IT since, and it's like, it's been hard at, yeah.
Well, Will, we had quite a few women in the Genius Bar at Quaker Bridge. Did you find everything she's saying to be true there as well?
I can't say that now. I would say no. I think back then it was very rare to have. Remember, you got to remember, there was no service specialist or FRS, and then it went to Genius. Mm-hmm. She was really the only female genius in that store. I think, honestly, from what I remember, until I think like Malinka came in, she was the only one I could think of. But now you're seeing a lot more service specialists becoming into geniuses, but it's definitely changed since we started. I mean, you know, Kelly was you were rare. Mm-hmm. And not only
you were just ahead of your time.
Yeah,
Kelly.
you were ahead of your time. You probably were, honestly. You know, look at like a pioneer in Apple retail right here.
That's right. There you go.
There you go. Now let's talk about after Apple. So, you know, you started up a new podcast called The Honey Pot History, which I started listening into, which is really deep diving into some things I had no idea about you. So can you share us a little bit about the podcast and what you talk about?
Yeah, I guess like a lot of it started like during my Apple days, like thinking back to it. So Honey Pot History is kind of like the last 12 years of my life. Medically hasn't been as well as it should be. I went through a hysterectomy last year and had a bunch of issues leading up to that. So Honey Pot History is a podcast just kind of talking about all of those symptoms that I went through, in hopes that other ladies or, you know, anybody out there listening would like see or hear those symptoms and be like, oh my gosh, you know, just help someone somewhere. But also it's like, eventually I would love for it to be a space where ladies could come on and tell their stories as well.
And that's one thing I'm hoping that you do for one podcast, is that you do have some people who have stories, because it's definitely, you know, I struggled for years trying to even have a child. Like that's been a struggle for us. But it's a story that, we don't really share very often. And, as deep as you go into, I think one of the things that I would like on your podcast and to add on is, yes, the stories of other people going through something very similar as you. So the Honeypot History is available. It's on all podcast platforms. You can see it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You're up there. New episodes coming out when? How often would you say you do an episode?
I'm trying to do it twice a month. This upcoming episode I'm hoping to have out next weekend is another tough one to record. And then after that, I have an interview set up, hopefully. So stay tuned.
All right. Well,
Are you in contact with any groups that help women through this process?
There's a lot of Instagram groups and communities that I've found that have been similar stories that have helped me. That was post hysterectomy. Leading up to it, it was kind of hard to find resources. At that point, I was looking more towards medical blogs and a lot of terms and stuff that I have no idea still. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of Facebook groups get into it and share it out there. So it would be be good to share. But since we're running a little short on time, I have to ask: would you return to Apple, Kelly, if you had the opportunity?
No, I would not. Ever since
Okay.
Steve Jobs passed, it's been completely different.
That
was much better.
Now I would tell you that I think if you came work at least 1 or 2 days, you might like it. I didn't hate it. Hate it. I mean, me and Frank were there for another 6 years after you left.
Yeah.
And even though it's different, and they definitely made a lot of mistakes along the way, like making us turn someone's wrist and try on a watch and make it look like it was a jewelry product. Don't even. They tried to make it was terrible.
But I think that's one of the things that I like about Apple is they were not afraid to try something, and if it didn't work, say it didn't work and change directions. That's one of the things I like about the retail piece of it.
And they treat us like corporate employees. Not to mention a lot of the benefits we got after you left, Kelly, were pretty tremendous.
Yeah.
Regarding school stock. I mean, we had the stock already, but there were some other things that they did help.
Refinance student loans.
They did a lot of great stuff for us and helped save me a ton of money. I have no more student loan anymore, thank God, because of that program.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So Frank hasn't had student loans since 1971.
They didn't, Princeton was the College of New Jersey when I went to college. So,
Okay. Well, to end off, Kelly, I got to ask your favorite Apple, before we head off, favorite Apple product and why?
Magic Trackpad. I feel like it's
that is interesting. Product. I didn't see that coming.
Woo! I use it every day. I am as fast as I can be with my job because of it.
There you go. Kelly, thank you so much for coming on. I hope we can have you back again for another episode, just to dive a little more into it. We got a little taste of Kelly here today, but we hope to have her on again. It's great. It's been great to connect with you the last couple of days.
Oh my gosh, I miss you guys. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking to you. Where are you at in Florida?
Yeah. What's up?
Where are you at in Florida?
I am Orlando area. Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Next time I go to Disney, I'm making sure.
Come see me. You know where I am.
I just spent the whole summer in Florida at Hutchinson Island at Port St. Lucie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Not bad. Yeah. Oh man, next time you're there, let me know, Frank.
All right, I will.
I will. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much. It's been so fun.
No problem. Thank you very much, Kelly, again. And thank you guys for joining us for this. I love getting interviews from older staff that we used to work with. But make sure you download the Honeypot History.
He just called you old, Kelly.
I did not. Okay. We are old. Okay. Look, I have no hair anymore.
I'm going to say
classic Apple retail right here.
Timeless.
Timeless. I'm running out of adjectives. All right. Thank you very much for joining us for the Honeypot History. Make sure you download that podcast, but make sure you come back every week for the Think Different podcast here on all your podcast platforms and on YouTube. Thank you.
5G is the 5G.